Welcome to the Intellectual Medicine Podcast with Dr. Stephen Petteruti, where we explore cutting-edge approaches to anti-aging, weight loss, and hormone optimization. Dr. Petteruti shares expert insights to help you live longer, healthier, and more vibrant lives. Tune in for actionable tips and the latest in personalized medicine.
Hey everybody. Well, we need to talk about your weight. Well, about weight in general and about obesity and its therapy. Welcome to Intellectual Medicine, the cornerstone of anti-aging life extension. The foundational piece is controlling percent body fat. I was talking to a PhD researcher in anti-aging and asked him to summarize his work. He said, let me put it to you this way. The skinny rats bury the fat rats. I'm not saying you're a fat rat. I'm saying that obesity correlates with a shortened lifespan and increased disability. But what to do about that? This is the era of GLP-1 injectable drugs, right? Hey, we've been using those for 15 years. What you're going to learn in the next about 25 minutes or so are all the cornerstone elements necessary to master your weight, percent body fat. And I'm going to talk about when and how to use drug therapy. Let's start out with the basics, right? There are two things every person does. Homo sapiens are engineered to do two main things. One, seek pleasure. The other, avoid pain. Seek pleasure means reproduce. Avoid pain means don't die. All of our other behaviors, to one degree or another, spin off of that, including our pattern of eating. There is a ton of misinformation about food, nutrition, and its complexity, right? It's not that complicated. I'm going to break it down for you. Homo sapiens, we need sustenance. Why are we always hungry? Our brains are huge and our stomachs are little. Relatively speaking, we have a huge brain, a little stomach. We are always burning energy. We need tons of energy in order to run that big fat brain of ours. Gorillas, our cousins, our primate cousins, they have huge stomachs and little brains relatively. They can eat once a day. They're good to go. How do you know when to stop eating? Right? It's not when you're full, people. There's a hole at the top, there's a hole at the bottom. You never get full. The French have a saying, nothing whets the appetite like eating. It's true. When you start to eat, you stop because you run out of food. And because we never run out of food, we have to make artificial firewalls. Why is this? We're going to explain that. There are hormones involved here that you need to know about. It helps you to know about. How about counting calories? How about if I just cut down on my calories? Won't that work? That will fail 100% of the time. The first book on counting calories came out in 1914. Lulu Hunt Peters, the Key to the Calories. Think about this. What is a calorie? It's a thermodynamic metric. You never went to the deli and said, yeah, I'd like to have 1,000 calories of chicken, please. We don't think that way. That's not how you should think about your food. Ignore calories, focus on ounces, focus on volume. No diets in the history of dieting have ever been proven to have long-term value, 0%. Studies done on diets, looking at those, what's called a meta-analysis, where you look at lots of studies and combine the outcomes, 0% of long-term benefit. They fail. Well, they fail to help you lose weight and keep it off. They succeed at making money for the people selling them. Seems like every couple of months there's a new diet book. Every couple of years there's a new diet fad. Remember Atkins? Well, Atkins was predated by Dr. Banting in the mid-1800s, who advocated a low-carb diet. Nothing new under the sun. It didn't work then. It doesn't work now. When I do, and I've been doing weight loss medicine for 30 years, right? I'm a board-certified family doc, and I've made weight loss treatment an area of focus for me because it's so important. So I'll ask a patient, have you been on diets before? Well, yeah, I went on, this diet and that diet, and they each worked. Yeah, but the weight came back. Folks, that's not the definition of success, right? Success is not a transient moment of better weight control followed by regain. Now, what happens with diets? The weight loss happens, and then it comes back. Not maybe 100% of the time. The studies done on dieting, 1 year after the diet ends, 35% of the people have regained all their weight. 5 years after it ends, 100% of people have regained all of their weight. Gastric bypass, I hope that fades away. For God's sakes, let's stop carving up people. Regain happens all the time. How about with the Ozempic? Look, drug therapy is important. It's a niche. It's critical. It's not a niche. It's a complementary treatment. You got to combine things. But you're going to learn in the next few minutes why the drug alone fails for long-term success. Now it's available. Anybody can buy it. Get it online. You don't need a doc. You just buy it and whammo, there you go. Weight loss has never been shown to help health outcomes. Fat loss does. But when you lose weight without balancing it with micronutrient support, if you lose weight without mindfulness about holding on to your muscle mass, your bones are going to shrink. In a study looking at GLP-1 drugs like semaglutide, like Ozempic, where they followed the patients for 8 weeks, only 8 weeks, those who only did the drug therapy with diet lost a significant amount of their bone density in 8 weeks. That bone doesn't come back easily. So what are the cornerstone elements? First, do not trust hunger. You do not eat when you are hungry because you're always hungry. Think about other mammals, other animals. They don't just eat whenever. If you have a pet dog, the dog eats when you feed it, when it's feeding time. Would the dog eat at other times? Absolutely. How about a thoroughbred, prized animal? They feed them specific times by the clock. You don't wait for the dog or for the thoroughbred to be bucking in the stall. You know they need to be fed, so you feed them. You, my friends, you're the same way. You have a necessity to fuel the machine. We call these feeding times in our lexicon. We want to segregate them from the notion of a meal being a sit-down, sumptuous event. A feeding time means you're fueling the machine. Nobody, very few people actually lose percent body fat if they're having less than 3 feeding times per day. That's a minimum. How about intermittent fasting? It is fading away, as well it should. It is not successful in helping you lose fat. Transient weight loss, perhaps. The rage for, or the fad of intermittent fasting spun off of animal studies done on mice. Mice, when they fasted for 8 hours, up to 16 hours, they had longevity advantages, they had other advantages. But they were miserable little mice. They attacked each other in the cage. Yeah, you don't read about that. It's in the fine print of the studies. Furthermore, a mouse lives about 3 years. Humans, 80. An 8 to 16 hour fast for a mouse equals to like a week in a human being. So this was a ridiculous extrapolation from animal studies. Does not work in humans. It makes you miserable. It doesn't fit socially, and it doesn't work. So let's abandon that. Let's abandon diets. Let's talk about permanent nutritional change built around the foundation of feeding times. If you don't have feeding times predetermined and built into your daily routine, your chance of losing fat diminishes greatly. What am I talking about? I advocate for a feeding time within an hour of getting up. It doesn't need to be a whole meal. It can be a single egg. It can be a protein shake. It does not need to be robust or a high volume. It does require, as you can note, protein at its core. If you get up in the morning and you have a bagel for breakfast, that ain't no protein. You're going to grow fat. Because when your body starts the day, it needs amino acids. They come from protein. The amino acids are used to create hormones. They're used to create neurotransmitters. They're used to create all the stuff the body runs on. And if you get up in the morning and there are no amino acids, no protein in your gut, your body will break down muscle to get it. It will digest itself, auto-digest. It'll cannibalize muscle. And where's the muscle? In your butt. It's the biggest muscle in the body. You continue the pattern of either skipping breakfast or having a muffin, and you're going to shrink your butt. And then by the time you eat, a lot of the body's essential functions have already taken place. You're going to store that fat in your gut. You show me somebody like with no butt and a belly. Ask them what they had for breakfast. I almost guarantee you it wasn't scrambled eggs. So you got to have that first feeding time within an hour. Then you premeditate the others. Here's the problem with a lot of folks. And here's the problem really with Ozempic and the other drugs. The obliteration of hunger. People perceive that as a great thing. This is awesome. I'm not hungry. I can go all day and not eat any food and look at my weight plummet. There's a problem. Have you analyzed percent body fat? Now, these percent body fat analyzers, we have them in intellectual medicine. I consider it an essential component of weight loss medicine. You cannot do effective, high quality weight loss medicine without this piece of equipment. It matters what you lose, not how much you lose. You lose 10 pounds, if 8 of it is muscle, you became less healthy. I don't care what the scale is saying. We call that like going from being big and fat to being little and fat. You do not want that, people. So you got to know what you're losing. The feeding times are critical. So if your hunger's not there and your feeding time comes up, you eat anyhow. I advocate for 4. I do 5 feeding times a day. My next feeding time will be in about an hour. I'm going to have 4 ounces of chicken. By virtue of knowing when I'm going to eat and what I'm going to eat, it helps me to stay consistent. This is what we're after. A permanent, durable, nutritional, behavioral change built around feeding times. Premeditated. I'll tell a lot of my patients, put them in your cell phone. Put them in as an alarm, as a prompt, so that you know when to eat. When you're busy during the day, the frontal lobe, your brain, can block any sense of hunger. The stomach goes empty. There's a hormone called ghrelin, 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 that the gut produces to tell the brain, hey, I'm empty, I need food. If you're busy, the brain blocks the perception of hunger. The ghrelin level goes up and up and up. And many of you have had this experience. You're working all day long, not feeling hungry. You get home and you're famished. The ghrelin level is through the roof, but there's no longer the frontal lobe stimulation to blunt hunger. So what do? You eat something. The problem is that it takes 30 minutes for those ghrelin levels to decline as the food is entering your stomach. So you eat something, the hunger doesn't go away, and your thought is, hey, I didn't eat enough. No, you ate plenty. You just messed up your day by not having your feeding times. So nail the feeding times. Where do snacks fit in? They don't. Everything's a meal. Think that way. Everything is a meal. I don't care if it's an apple. That's a meal. You have to think this way if you want to shrink fat. Now, those of you gifted with a ridiculous metabolism, you could disregard all this. I'm talking to the bulk of us, however, that must be premeditated in order to prevent fat growth. Human beings are the fattest animals at the time of birth. There's not another organism on the planet that is as fat as we are when we come out of the chute. And we stay that way, right? The fat continues unless we're premeditative. Here is one of the areas you have been dramatically misled. The notion that we have to have variety in our food is nonsense. Repetition is your friend. Simplicity is your friend. You're too busy to craft a menu for 4 or 5 meals per day. Yeah, my breakfast every morning for the past 10 years, 9 out of 10 mornings, has been a daily fuel protein shake. That's what we have here at Intellectual Medicine. It's phenomenal. It's plant-based, non-GMO, wonderful. Every morning, same thing. How about lunch? My second feeding time is very consistently chicken-based, high protein, low carb. Sound boring to you? Well, I'd rather have blueberry muffins. I'd rather have bagels, English muffins, pasta, but I'd rather not be fat. And that's the fork in the road that we all face. Ain't nothing wrong with eating a high carb diet. It's your prerogative. But do not expect to do that and stay lean, folks. It's not going to happen for most of you. So we have feeding times, premeditated, pre-portioned. You want to get those little glass, not plastic anymore, right, gang? We're all down on microplastics. A glass portioning bowl, put your meal in it, now you know what you're going to eat. These are meal replacement equivalents. And by the way, when you're having 4 to 5 feeding times a day, meal replacements are totally cool. You got to be careful. A lot of the stuff commercially available has a lot of artificial sweetener in it, which stimulates the brain to crave for more carb. Now, Intellectual Medicine does have a website that anybody can go to, and you can purchase all meal replacements if you want to make this part of your game plan. I encourage it. I think meal replacements aren't transient. They're not something you do for a little while. They can be a staple. So now you've got your feeding times. What should you eat? I recommend that you keep your net carbohydrate load below 20 grams per feeding time. Net carbohydrate is calculated by taking the total amount of carbohydrate in a food and subtracting the fiber. That gives you your net carbohydrate. That's your focus. Don't worry about the fat. When you target net carbohydrate, the fat kind of takes care of itself. How about protein? At a minimum, you're targeting 15 grams per feeding time. You can increase that if you're a bigger human, or you're more physically active, or you're doing strength training. How much protein is too much? It's hard to get too much protein. The notion that protein is going to somehow damage your kidney and cause negative effect has not held up in research. There are some people that have medical conditions requiring limitations, but for the rest of us, have a ball, eat all the protein you want. How do you know if the protein you're taking is sufficient? Number one, the muscles stay healthy. That is, you don't shrink muscle. Number two, you feel good energy. And number three, the percent body fat is dropping. Those are all good signs. If you're finding yourself weak or withering in muscle mass, bump up your protein. 4 feeding times a day are the minimum. Now let's go back to that whole seek pleasure thing. This doesn't sound like much fun, but it can be. In our philosophy of treatment at Intellectual Medicine, we talk about hedonistic eating. That means fun eating. It means pizza, French fries, ice cream, alcohol. It means all the stuff that's fattening that we really shouldn't eat much of. However, you don't want to live without it. So in my world, I like a margarita, and I like French fries. Those are two of my hedonisms. I could do without pizza. I could do without chips. Candy, not so much. So once a week, I have 2 margaritas, and that is a hedonistic, premeditated hedonism. So that when I'm eating my chicken for the 3rd time in the week, I can look forward to my hedonistic outlet, right? That's called anticipatory hedonism. If you don't structure your hedonism and you try to live without it, you will develop a hedonistic deprivation and you'll get rebound. On the other hand, if you amplify your hedonism too often, you're going to grow fat. Hedonism is premeditated. You plan it ahead of time. Hedonism is not walking through the break room at work, seeing cookies on a tray and saying, well, the doctor says hedonism is good, I think I'll eat one. That's called impulsivity, and that leads to a negative effect. So you got to have hedonism at least once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. You pick the item. Then you limit it. And the best way to limit it that I know is to not have it in your house. If you like ice cream, don't put a gallon of it in the freezer. Go to the ice cream store. Same thing with margaritas. I don't make them at home. Just go out, make it an event. So you got to have hedonism, got to have feeding times. You've got to have the protein, the carbohydrate. How about fruit? Isn't fruit good for me? Fruit is phenomenally overrated. Fruit is a carb bomb. Fruit is a fat-growing hedonistic diversion. Fruit is the wolf in sheep's clothing. I really shouldn't use cliches, but you got the picture. Fruit has a reputation for being healthy. But doctor, aren't blueberries a superfood? Ugh, how I hate that word. There are no superfoods, people. Food is like the weather. It is amoral. It is just a force. It's like rain. Too much is bad, not enough is bad. It's about what it does to you, right? So fruit, yeah, you can have some fruit at a feeding time. It's part of a meal. You never have an apple just to take the edge off your hunger. An apple in between feeding times will grow fat. Blueberries will grow fat. Now, blueberries have a reputation for being antioxidants. Don't they have polyphenols? Aren't those antioxidants? Well, what happens when you eat too much food? Your body creates free radicals, pro-oxidative substances, to digest the food. I don't care if they're blueberries or potato chips. If you eat too many blueberries, your body will create a free radical storm in the process of digestion. So the blueberries can be nice, but they're volume driven. Be mindful of volume with everything. How about calories? Ignore them. I already told you that. We don't think calories, we don't live calories. That is a failed pathway. It's appealing, right? If I cut 100 calories, won't I then lose weight? No. Your brain and your body will make counter-regulatory measures. How about exercise? Yeah, I like exercise, but you will never walk off your fat. I don't care what they tell you. You walk like that, your body has adaptive metabolic changes to preserve the fat. It's horrible but true. So do not go to the gym and think that you're going to walk on that stupid treadmill trying to shrink fat. If you like walking on that stupid treadmill and it gives you some type of psychological comfort, well, that's cool. That's your thing. Maybe a little bit weird, but that's okay. The point is that exercise is for mental health, it is for body structure, it is for muscle development, it is for cardiovascular conditioning, it is not for shrinking fat. It has minimal impact. You're better off spending that time planning your menu. Now, I've saved the last for pharmacology. Obesity is a chronic, relapsing metabolic disorder that is stigmatized and biased against. Therefore, it requires chronic, sustainable treatment pathways. Whatever pharmacology your doctor prescribes or you choose to utilize, it should be with an open mind that you'll need it intermittently, long term, maybe the rest of your life. At Intellectual Medicine, we use a lot of phentermine, phendimetrazine. Why? They've been around for 60 years, since the 1950s. I like old drugs. They've shown their warts, if you will. These drugs are extraordinarily safe. And oh, by the way, they're super cheap, $20, $30 a month. And we have had phenomenal results using this approach. Do we use GLP-1s? Well, we've used GLP-1 drugs like semaglutide for 15 years. They're wonderful. They have a niche. But you don't have to go to them as your first step. Pharmacologically speaking, I consider these to be best held in reserve because of their extraordinary expense. Gastrointestinal side effects are a thing as well. Now, if you do have access to them, and I know most of you do, remember your feeding times and remember your bone and your muscle. If you're having 2 feeding times a day and you're on semaglutide and you're losing weight, you are shrinking bone. We got to think about this not just for the next 6 months or 2 years, the next 10. If you're 30 and you're shrinking bone, what's going to happen when you're 50 and you trip and fall? You're going to break a hip? So feeding times, simplicity, repetition. The people who have the greatest success are the people that drill down their favorite foods and they just repeat them and repeat them. Dining out, of course you can do that. Vacations, absolutely. You control every part of the environment. Well, I've been at this for 30 years, intellectual medicine, life extension, anti-aging, my passions, your benefit, our goal together. Nobody gets to live their longest and best life if they're toting around all that excess weight. We'll be talking about this on a regular basis. Thanks for being part of my podcast, spending some time with me. I hope you found it helpful and worthwhile. I'll be talking to you very soon. Very soon. I know we're all going to live to be 120, but still I don't want to squander the time. So I'll see you next time here at Intellectual Medicine. Thanks for being with me.